Thank you for joining us here again at Get Ready News. I'm Mark Lindsted. This is my brother David Lindsted, and we're here to talk about things we see in the news according to the Bible.
Absolutely. This week was a very volatile week. I mean, we had an election happen. We've had all sorts of wars and rumors of wars happening. We have all sorts of what I would call end-time things happening this week.
Well, it's funny that the election results were much different than I anticipated them, and I don't know that I could tell you if I anticipated that the people's opinion would be different or that the mechanism in which our votes are counted might have been different.
Absolutely. I see there's a big difference between last election's numbers and this election's numbers, and it leaves a lot of questions to be asked.
Yep. Well, there's several things that have taken place since the election of President Trump, or President-elect Trump a second time. I guess, how do you say that? He's number 45 and number 47.
That's right.
And there's going to be some really exciting things happen, and I think we can see a pattern here of what happens when a country, in my opinion, corrects itself from a wayward way.
Exactly. One of the things I see is, people are asking right now, is this going to be a good thing or a bad thing for the country? And we're actually seeing that this has actually affected the whole world. It's just not America that this election has affected.
Well, and the interesting thing is how it affects the world for the next 4 years is completely up to Donald Trump. How is he going to rule? Is he going to rule as a righteous king? I know he's not a king, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's a king, but is he going to rule, as the Bible would say, as a righteous king, or is he going to rule as a bad king, as that would leave God in the ways of the fathers and do evil?
I find it interesting, he's been going around touting where he'd been shot before and where they've had other attempts on his life, and it sounds like there may even been a couple of other attempts that were forwarded before they even got off the ground. And he was saying stuff like, well, God saved him for this time.
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely believe that.
Sure.
But I also believe that God put Joe Biden in office.
That's right.
I believe that God put Putin in office.
Exactly. So we could be judged by this or we could be blessed by this. I think clearly if you look at the two tickets and the two parties running and what they stood for, there was clearly one that was more associated biblically or inclined biblically to my understanding and beliefs, and that's who I voted for.
Exactly, and I think that's what you have to do as a Christian, is you have to pick the best candidate that aligns with the beliefs that you have, and someone that you hope will preserve your ability to get the gospel out, because that's the most important part, is to get the gospel out.
Well, that's why I gave a sermon just last Sunday before the election, and I said, I know that it might ruffle some feathers here, but abortion is not my number one issue for voting this year. And guess why? Both candidates support abortion. Whether or not it's at 15 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 months, they both support abortion. So I went, as a missionary, to the one that's going to allow me to present the gospel and the one who's not going to allow me to present the gospel.
Absolutely. The other thing that really strikes me is Trump is pro-LGBT.
Yeah.
Trump is pro-gay.
Yeah.
I'm not against gay people. I'm against that lifestyle and that type of thing that is sin. But Trump is actually pro-gay. And it's amazing, Israel is pro-gay also.
Yeah. Israel is a very secular country. Most people don't realize this, that there's just a handful. There's a small portion, a minority of the country that is Orthodox Jewish. And there's a minority of the country right now that's Muslim. And the majority of the country in Israel is secular. Whether they're Arab or Jewish descent, they're secular. And it's similar to America. I don't care how many people call themselves Christians in America. They don't really align with Christian values.
Yeah, exactly. And the Jewish people would say they're Jewish, but they don't necessarily align with real Jewish values and keeping the law and stuff like that. And I think that was one of the biggest surprises I had when I did go to Israel, is I expected everybody to be religious, if you will.
Yeah.
And even though most people would kind of keep the Sabbath and buy kosher things, they really weren't Jewish.
They're just actions that they're accustomed to doing.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I love the picture here. Is it going to be a nuclear war, or is it going to be a peaceful, tranquil day? That's exactly what the thought is. How is it going to affect us?
And we need to look at this beyond just a leader of a country. How does this impact the world? Mm-hmm. And does this get us closer and closer to the end times? Are we seeing a setup for this end times?
Sure.
And one of the things I look at and I say, we can't just look at America and say, well, because America is doing X means that the end of the world is coming.
Yeah.
Because it's actually the entire world.
Sure.
But here we are, we're looking at what has happened in Europe since Trump has been elected. And we see an article here talking about that there's three countries that have a major concern. And what really gets me about this article is the three countries that are listed.
Yeah. Yeah, well, definitely. And this is this axis of power that we saw coming together over the last couple of years here that really align with Ezekiel 38.
Yeah, and that's something you can't dismiss. And some people would like to take Gomer and make it Turkey.
No. Yeah.
And then they want to move all this stuff around because they can't foresee Germany being in cahoots with Russia. But guess what? There's a lot of connections between Russia and Germany.
Yeah.
Power issues or gas issues, stuff like that. And here, those are the three countries, those three big ones are the big ones in end times that are together.
Yeah. Well, it talks about Gomer, which is Germany. It talks about Rosh, which is, in our opinion, Russia.
Yep.
It talks about Meshech and Tobolsk, which is actually Moscow and Tobolsk.
Yeah.
There are two capitals because Russia has two capitals. One's a governmental capital. One is a financial capital. And so we see the two different things there, but then we see China. And China, it says there's a 200 million man army out of the east.
Yeah.
And China boasts to have a 200 million man army.
And it's interesting. It says that 200 million man army will come across a dry Euphrates River. And guess what?
The Euphrates is drying up.
The Euphrates is drying up.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. But there's even more things going on worldwide just at the election of Trump.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
It's amazing to see the entire world react. In fact, I saw people in the streets of London waving the British flag and singing and saying USA Trump, USA Trump. And I don't care what you think about America. I don't care where you think we are. One thing I'll tell you, we're not in Bible prophecy.
No.
But right now, America is the place that every country looks up to lead the world.
We are the last bastion of free speech.
Yeah.
What's left of it?
Yeah.
Because, political correctness has really counteracted freedom of speech. Because now you can be canceled, you can be held accountable for something that you said, even though free speech allows you to say something hateful.
Yeah. Well, there's last time I read an article, so there was more than 3,300 people in the United Kingdom in jail for what they said.
Yeah.
And there's right now there's a teacher who refuses to affirm trans pronouns. He's been in prison or in jail for 400 plus days because he doesn't want to participate in calling somebody what they're not.
Yeah, it just boggles the mind that we would call a free country would be that way. In fact, there was an article about a man on trial for praying silently in his head too close to an abortion clinic.
He was a veteran.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. I saw a woman who was arrested the same thing. They asked her if she was praying. She said yes, and they arrested her.
And we're talking thought police. It is 1984.
I'm all for making Orwell fiction again. I'm tired of this stuff just coming to fruition. It's just like we wrote a pattern and we followed it.
Exactly. And the other thing that I see is you say that in Matthew 24 it says these things must happen. Yep. These things are going to happen. We can't get out of this. One of the things I think people believe is, we're going to put Trump in, and all of a sudden we're going to have that sunny day, those beautiful fields like we had on that first picture, that everything's going to be just fine. And they always kick back to this verse over in 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and heal their land.
Well, that's got to be America.
Well, that's what everybody wants to say. They say, hey, that's America. This is, but wait a minute, is America God's people?
No.
No. The church is God's people, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Does the church have land?
No, the church owns absolutely no land.
No land. What's interesting about this passage is God was putting Israel's land under a curse. He was withholding rain because they were sinning. And he said, if you quit sinning, remember, he already has an agreement with them.
Yeah.
You do what I say, I bless you. You don't do what I say, and I'll curse you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's withholding the rain from the land. He says, if you repent, I'm going to make it rain again.
Yeah.
So even if it was about America, do we have a problem with our land?
No.
You can't take and make land people and people land. It just doesn't work.
Israel will always be God's chosen people.
Absolutely.
Israel will always own the land of Israel.
Yes.
It will always be theirs.
Yep.
And the church does not own land.
Exactly.
Period.
We are not part of that.
The only time that you can ever tie a blessing for the church in a certain area of a world might be is when you look at Genesis 12, I think, where it says, I will bless them that bless thee, and I will curse them that curse thee.
Exactly.
And that, I think you could see, as America fluctuates with its wavering support, it goes up and down on its support for Israel, and every time our support goes down, we have a problem.
Yeah, that's true. There was a guy that wrote a book, I think it was Eye on Israel, Eye for Eye. It was Bill Koech. Mm-hmm. And what he wrote is every time we crossed Israel, we would get some type of natural disaster, something would happen, and it's amazing how that lines up. I think one of the ones I remember vividly in my mind is when Bush gave Gaza to the Palestinians, so-called Palestinians, and we had Katrina.
Yeah.
It says whenever you divide the land in Israel, you're going to be cursed.
Yeah. Well, and we can see through this last administration how many people supported Iran over Israel, and we can see some devastation happening there. How many floods and earthquakes and crazy tornadoes and all the situations we have.
Yeah, I think that things that we do impact us as a whole, but don't misunderstand that Trump's going to save America and return it to whatever glory we thought we had.
No, I think if we really truly bless Israel, if we truly stand behind Israel, we could have a golden age of this country again. I could see that happening, but it would have to be the country as a whole really supporting Israel, and I don't see that.
No, and I see that even getting worse and more strained.
Well, and I saw, and I wished I could remember where it was, but Trump gave a message to college campuses. And he said to the presidents of colleges, he says, you either root out your anti-Semitic people and get rid of those clubs on your campus, or we will remove your accreditation and your federal funding. And I hope he does that. He should.
Yeah, I agree. And to see these, what do they call Palestinian protests on campus, I don't know why we're putting up with that and dealing with that. It's not a productive thing for school to be involved in that, number one. And it also bothers me that teachers are actually propagating this and trying and getting the students to do this more and more.
I can't tell you how much when I see somebody say to a teacher, well, we couldn't possibly take a test today because of the what's happening in Gaza. Yeah. I remember, and I think I was in 6th grade when the Challenger blew up, the space shuttle. Mm-hmm. I remember they took us all to the lunchroom. They wheeled in a TV on the cart, the old cart with the VCR on it. Yep. We were watching this thing go up, and all of a sudden, boom! They unplugged the TV. They wheeled it back to the library. We went back to class. Yeah. Okay, now students, 3 times 3 is 6. And it was, wow, that's a horrible thing to have happen, but it doesn't mean I can't continue my day.
Right, true. But it just, we've become a country of soft snowflakes, and words hurt us now and things like that. Now, speaking of the Middle East, there's also going to be a little bit of impact in that area. And, Trump has brazenly said again that he's going to bring peace to the Middle East.
Well, if you look at the headlines and if you pay attention to what's really going on, Trump is well on his way to bringing peace before he even is sworn in.
Well, that's for sure. Never in my life have I seen dominoes fall like this.
Well, I did once before. That's what I was talking about. We start to see some of what I would call a reminiscence of the United States returning to support for Israel and the United States having a good time. Yeah. And what I can see now is I remember, and I was just a kid, but I think I finally remember a few news stories about this, that when Carter was president, they had hostages in Kuwait. And the moment that Reagan won, it was almost like the terrorists said, what airline would you like us to send them home on? Do you want it first class? Do you want them to have their own plane? We want to get rid of these guys. We want you to have them back right now.
And then Jimmy Carter begged to get on the plane to meet them as they received them back into the United States, and it was like, I think there was an interview later, and they were talking to the Iran, Shah of Iran. Yeah. No, it was whatever his name was, the supreme leader.
Yeah.
And he says, well, Reagan got in the office and he's a cowboy.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what he was going to do. We were a little bit afraid of him.
Well, and you look at these headlines right here. Trump promises to bring everlasting peace in tumultuous Middle East. And what do you see? The Houthis. We think we're really kind of done fighting right now. I think we proved our point. We're just going to be defensive if someone tries to come after us. And then you see the Hamas. We'd like a ceasefire. We'd like to talk about how we could peacefully end this. And then you got Zelensky, who's getting his entire money laundering system is probably going to come crashing down.
Well, and I think you're absolutely 100% right about the last one. I think that was a money laundering for the entire world.
Oh, yeah.
I think the United States and UK and all of them are funneling money in there to launder it.
Well, Biden and his association with Ukraine goes so deep.
Oh, yeah.
And absolutely. I would love to see their actual bank accounts and where the money has come from.
Absolutely. Because I remember Biden saying without a shadow of a doubt, you're not going to get the money that the Obama promised you until you get rid of
the guy prosecuting my son.
Exactly. And he didn't say it that way. He made it sound like the guy was a bad guy and we need to get rid of him. But he was actually putting pressure on the Bidens.
Well, and you look at his son Hunter, who had an $83,000 a month salary from Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company. And what is Hunter Biden's qualifications to work for an energy company?
Nada.
Zero. Yeah. About that would be like me going in there.
Yeah.
I have no idea what I'm doing. Just give me the money. And I would take the job. Don't get me wrong. Burisma, you need someone to be the CEO to make $80,000 a month. I'll be happy to do that for you. I will put it to good work in the Lord's ministry.
I could be the spokesmodel.
But, it's such an evil thing. And I think a lot of times wars can be used to cover up financial crime.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't care what anybody has to say about it. Trump did not start a single war.
No.
And every president, for the last that I can remember, started a new war.
It seemed like whenever they felt like a recession or something was going to happen, they've come up with something to distract, and actually war makes money.
Yep, sure does.
And a lot of the people, Nikki Haley, a lot of these people are actually tied to various defense contractors, and they actually profit from these things.
Oh, yeah. Well, I look at the United Nations Security Control sign you got there, and it says, international peace and safety. And that reminds me of this 1 Thessalonians 5:3. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and when they shall not escape.
Exactly. So, this is going to come about.
Yeah.
This is something, and it kind of gets me that Trump has made such a brass statement that he's going to fix the problems in the Middle East. And what is that going to lead to?
Yeah.
A sense of
peace and safety.
Peace and safety.
Wow. Yeah. And anyone who's been to Israel can tell you that if the UN has spent a lot of time in the Middle East. Yeah. They can tell you exactly what Israel thinks of the UN. Israel as a whole, even the secular people in Israel, call them, UN stands for United Nothing, because they do absolutely nothing good. And we can even see that the United workers there at the education center, well, even Sinwar's driver, I think, was listed as a teacher.
Yes, for that.
At this RAW, whatever it was, UN school.
And Israel does not recognize them at all. In fact, they call them a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
It's a really bad deal, and it amazes me how Israel can be condemned for all these humanity rights, but yet Iran can be on the board for humanity rights when you talk about one of the most offensive people for that, offensive countries.
Well, I think Israel has more violations voted against them in the UN than all the other countries combined.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and without a doubt.
It's crazy because Israel doesn't do anything to anybody. They respond when they get attacked. They tell people to leave them alone.
Yep.
And then they get sanctioned, or they get told they're bad, or they get told you're committing genocide.
Yeah, and what happened on October 7th in 2023 is the most horrific thing you can think of, and they're being condemned for solving the problem.
It's interesting. But Trump has had a huge impact just in the few days he's been elected.
Exactly. Here's our next impact. all of a sudden, Wall Street is bouncing up. Now, I've seen articles, I've seen the news commentators say, well, this happens anytime.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't go up 1,500 points in one day.
No.
It doesn't skyrocket. In fact, if you look at the one graph there, look at where the dollar was before and where the dollar is now. It jumped, skyrocketed. And I think that being that we have a fiat currency, that it matters what people think about your currency and what value they put to it.
Well, yeah. What's your ability to back it up?
Exactly.
Since it's not backed by gold anymore, it's got to be backed up by you as a nation and your credit score. And
exactly. And so the thought of Trump,
yeah,
Trump is backing the dollar is what it is, and we even see the BRICS.
Yeah,
BRICS is having a problem now. They're now worried.
I hope that thing crashes into the ground. I mean, they were really set. What they wanted to do, they wanted to take over the dollar as what you trade for oil and other things, and that would have really crashed our economy.
Oh, yeah, that would have hurt United States because that's the only thing other than, trust in the country that it gives it out that kept any type of value to the dollar was you had to buy oil in dollars.
Yeah.
So rubies, or whatever the...
rupee in India, rubles in Russia.
All that had to be converted to a dollar,
Yeah.
and then you buy oil. And BRICS was trying to get rid of that.
Yeah. In fact, there are still some people who are making payments without dollars right now because of that. Yeah. And I think Trump will be the one to go back and say, hey, the agreement is you'll trade it in dollars.
Yeah.
And we're done. But the next thing he's going to do is drill, baby, drill.
Yeah.
We're not going to be paying this $4 a gallon for fuel anymore. This is ridiculous.
The other thing that I see is not only did that bolster Wall Street here, it did other countries' stock markets went up.
Oh, yeah.
And we see a global rise in confidence. I don't know that there's anything behind it, but we see a global rise in confidence.
Well, anytime you bring back a party that's financially conservative and has an upward outlook and a capitalist mindset, then the economies of the world are going to grow because America leads that as well.
Exactly. And the other thing I see is now, Trump's going to put more tariffs out. He's going to try to make things a little more equal, if you will, across the table.
Yeah.
And that will help America quite a bit. And it may and may not. It may help other countries as well.
Well, I hear people saying that tariffs are just going to make us pay more for things.
Yeah.
And in a way, yes. But if I take a Chinese product and I put a tariff on it so that the Chinese product and the American product are now the exact same price, guess what product I'm going to buy?
Exactly.
I'll buy the American product to bolster the American economy.
Yeah.
And that's what he wants. He wants them to be on a fair playing grid so that when that happens, everybody can go out and pick the best item for their purchase. And in this, he offsets taxes. That's how he plans to get rid of the taxes on tips, taxes on overtime, taxes on Social Security payments. And, Social Security payments, it just blows my mind. That's tax money that's been taxed already to tax it again to give it to somebody else.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that. I watched a couple of TikToks with some of these liberal girls that are starting to figure this out. Let's say I go to work and I work at a company and I make money, but the government taxes it.
Yeah.
And then I go home and I go to the store to buy something and the government taxes it again.
Yep.
And then I go and do this and the government taxes.
Yeah.
I'm getting taxed 3 and 4 times on the same money.
I think the American dollar gets taxed, 4 or 5 times, no matter what. It's ridiculous.
Oh, that's terrible.
So the United Nations is still doing their thing. What's their next plan here? They're going to drop some Wait a minute. Dropping charges.
Yeah,
I thought he was a felon above felons and deserved to be like Al Capone, locked away forever.
I heard one news commentator say, I can't believe people would vote for a felon.
Well, the founding fathers were all felons, if you ask the crown.
That's for sure. But this is a very, I don't know if ironic's the right word, But, they kept saying, well, when Trump gets in the office, he's going to take the DOJ and he's going to sick it on all the people that were against him. But yet, it looks like they were already doing that.
Wait a minute. You mean it's pretty common to blame somebody or accuse somebody of something you're already doing to hide what you're doing from everybody?
That's been a ongoing theme for the last, I don't know how many years. But every time a Democrat points at you and says you're guilty of something, you better look at their background. They're probably doing it.
Well, I always like a Democrat, when they point, there's three more fingers pointing back at them, because guarantee they're doing it. And it's interesting. I was so baffled at how many people say that women are going to lose health care.
Oh,
That LGBTQ, alphabet soup, whatever you call them, are going to lose their rights.
Yep.
I mean, I want to know, do you really believe that? Do they really honestly believe these things, these talking points?
And I agree with you. I don't know that they actually, I shouldn't say that, because I've actually watched videos where people say, well, are your rights as a woman being infringed on? Well, yeah. Well, tell me which ones. And they're like, well, I just can't think of one right now. So I think it's been this battle cry, and people want to have this problem, but it doesn't exist. And just like they call abortion is not health care.
No.
That is not even close to what health care is. It's murder. And they've renamed it, and they've called it tissue instead of a baby.
Yeah.
They call it a fetus, which just means baby in Latin. It's just preposterous that. But they have people believing that and following that.
Well, where does this kind of leave us? It leaves us in a pace of two places here. I think it could either be that we're going to have some really good economic times. I think maybe we have another 20 or 30 years of prosperity.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen when the vacuum of somebody like Trump leaves?
Yes.
In my opinion, it's going to be so chaotic. It's going to be such a crazy time that we'll see this Paul Henry Spock quote come true. Mm-hmm. He says, we don't need another committee. What we want is a man just to lift us out of our economic morass, which is exactly where progressive policies get us.
Yes.
And an economic morass in which we are sinking. Send us such a man, and if he be of God or of the devil, we will receive him. Yeah. And I think what happens here is we see an opening for the vacuum of power and leadership to maybe even bring in the Antichrist.
Yep.
So I think that's where we're looking at.
I think everything's setting up just fine. I think that we're actually going to speed ahead as fast as ever into global governance, currency, religion. I think all that's going to speed ahead regardless that Trump was put into power.
Yep. Well, I'm excited about the election results. Yes. I hope that you'll take the time to pray for our president and our leaders like I do every day, because they need guidance and they need to run and go toward Christ and govern and rule the way Christ would have them rule. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.